For me, Martin, Veterans Day is, looking back on my family. My father served in World War II. My brother was in Vietnam. And of course, I wanted to serve my country because my parents taught me three things: love of family, love of faith, and love of country. And so I went into the Marine Corps and went into this episode of the Iran hostage crisis, and then found out that 8 individuals lost their life in an attempted rescue operation. So I have never forgotten those 8 individuals. And obviously, when I came home, my good girlfriend at the time, now my wonderful wife of 40 years, she told me the story. And it's one of those things, Martin, every morning I wake up, I think of those individuals and their families. And right now, less than 1% of our population is providing us the freedom that we all enjoy each and every day. And so, November 4th, 42 years ago, 7 days ago, 42 years ago, they burnt our American flag in front of our American embassy. And so it hurt. And, when you live here in our country, you don't see too many people that are, leaving our country to go to another country. It seems like everybody's dying to try to get to our country. And so we have a great place to live, and the veterans are to be thanked, and along with the families.
And for you, you've shared your story over the years, and I've thought about this. It's probably more what therapeutic. Like if you never talk about it, it maybe haunts you even more. Is that accurate?
And no, you're absolutely right. I can remember coming home, the Marines, we were all so young, 23 years of age, Martin, to go through 444 days of captivity. It was pretty challenging. And we had a psychiatrist sit down and said, there's going to be two ways that you're going to deal with this. One way, you're going to keep it inside and eventually something's going to break. Or the other is you're going to learn to talk about it and use it as a stepping stone to make it through life. And I tell you, that's for me, obviously coming home and working for CBS and then for Budweiser for 34 years. Now I work for an organization called Folds of Honor, which provides scholarships to families of fallen and disabled. So it's going back to those 8 guys. It's one of those things that's very therapeutic for me to, work with these families and also tell the story of how these 90 some guys had the guts to try to come over to regain my freedom, what that American flag represents. So it's my responsibility until hopefully I die that I will continue to tell that story and remind people that freedom is not free.
How vivid are the memories of that day, November 4th, 1979? And remind maybe even the younger folks that haven't heard the entire story, how did that all unfold that day?
Yeah, I had, the Iran hostage crisis really started, when you speak to the Islamic Republic of Iran, they'll tell you it started back in 1950 when we basically put into power the Shah of Iran. And of course, the Shah in 1979 fled the country in January and he went into exile. I go to MSG, I get to Marine Security Guard duty, and I get to Iran October 7th. And just weeks later, the Shah of Iran is admitted into the United States for medical treatment. And it's interesting, Martin, that it's documented that President Carter, in the meeting when they asked President Carter that they needed to bring the Shah in, President Carter, basically asked him, what are you going to say when the Islamic Republic of Iran takes her people hostage? Then what are you going to say? And so when he said that, little did he realize 2 weeks later is exactly what happened. The Shah was allowed into the United States. There were demonstrations daily at the American embassy up to November 4th. I was walking into the motor pool gate that morning to go into town, getting an Iranian driver. And all of a sudden, my walkie-talkie had recall. And I turned to look at the front gate, Martin, and I will never forget. I will tell every American that morning there was no security at the American embassy. Those people were coming over the wall, by hundreds and thousands. And they broke the chain. They all basically came in. I ran back to the chancery. Billy Gallegos was closing the 4-inch steel door. I squeezed him. We secured it. And obviously the rest, 4 hours later, 7 Marines held that American embassy off for 4 hours. 4 hours, Martin, waiting for the host government of the Islamic Republic of Iran to come to provide us protection. It is against international law to attack in the American embassy, any embassy. And obviously, the Islamic Republic of Iran never showed. President Carter, as they start bringing Americans that did not make it into the Chancery that morning, they brought them to the other 4-inch steel door. And Martin, I can tell you that that morning, how they got into the American embassy, they used Iranian women in the basement as they broke through the bars. They bring 4 Iranian women in black chadors, using them as shields. And behind them were the Iranian men. We popped tear gas, went up to the very top, and that's when the Iranians start bringing people that they had taken, putting weapons to their head, and demanding that we open a door, or else they were going to kill them. That's when President Carter said, "Give yourself up, and we'll get this resolved with diplomacy." And that obviously was the start of 444 days, where the Americans were stripped their freedom, their dignity, and their pride.
Isn't every embassy, and I've wondered about this, of course, we had the tragedy of Benghazi, but is every embassy around the globe somewhat dependent on the host country to like play ball? And because we're in some really nasty places, aren't we? Where I've always wondered, it seems like it's still a dicey operation.
No, you're absolutely right. Every American embassy, just as the Americans that embassies that are in Washington, D.C., if you've ever traveled to D.C. and you go through Embassy Row, those are protected, the outside perimeter, by the host government, which is the United States of America. When you go to Germany, the Germans are protecting the American embassy. When you're in Iran, the Iranians are supposed to be protecting. I hate to say it, up to the point of November 4th, as I would walk from the Marine House to the back of the embassy, our Marine House was on the other side of the street behind the embassy. In the morning, Martin, I would walk to work, and a guard would pull his pistol out of the holster, and he would actually point it at me and act like he was going to shoot me. At night, hours later, this same guard would come running up to me and say, "Can you help me get visa? I need visa for my family and I." So one minute they're your friend, next minute they're your enemy. But yes, it's very dicey depending on what country that you're in. But 1979, we did not have the reactionary forces like what we do now. A lot of things were created. CENTCOM was created to make sure that never again was there any hostage crisis, or if there were, they were going to have contingencies in place to help provide protection.
And the moment it happens, you realize at that point you guys are hostages. Did you think, all right, this is going to be a day or a week, and then the Americans will come storming through the door?
No, absolutely, because it just so happened I was a fleet Marine. I was in the Mediterranean in January of 1979 when the American embassy evacuated 20,000 Americans. There were 20,000 Americans in Iran. It was a beautiful country, very westernized. And all of a sudden, when the Shah fled and Ayatollah Khomeini came in, it really got rough. But I can tell you that that January, we were locked and loaded on board of CH-53s to go in and help provide protection. So as I sat that first month, Martin, I can tell you, in that corner of that room, day one at night, they would put you on the floor and tie your wrists to your ankles. But that first 30 days, your arms were tied to the arms of the chair and your feet were tied to the feet of the chair. And the first day, you're sitting there thinking, you know what, the Marines are coming. I know they're out there because I was just out there waiting. And you're sitting there thinking, Martin, through the broken windows, you could hear the city of Tehran start in the morning and the traffic would peak. And you'd hear the demonstrators demonstrating, chanting "Death to America." And all of a sudden, the city would go to bed. And the next day would come. And you're sitting there thinking, you know what? It's 1979. The Vietnam War had just ended in 75. And nobody cared about the Vietnam veterans. They were sped on when they came home. They were ridiculed. My brother was serving in Vietnam. He couldn't get home fast enough to take his uniform off because they didn't want to be seen with it. And so here I am thinking, if nobody cared about them, who's going to care about 65 Americans in that country? So yes, I thought, and again, my story is one of many 65 stories that were there, and I thought that we were definitely forgotten.
And of those 65, would there be any interaction? I mean, I wonder, there's so many things going on where there's, you're mentally afraid you're going to die, but then just the lack of actual socialization too, right? I mean, did you have any interaction?
Well, I had interaction the first 30 days. You were not allowed to speak to any of the other hostages. The only person you spoke to was in your interrogations. And your interrogations, they wanted to break you. They wanted you to make derogatory statements. They wanted you to open safes. They wanted you to make confessions and this and that. I spent my first Thanksgiving. Obviously, I did not make any confessions, never wrote any letters. Um, that first Thanksgiving, I can tell you, very lonely because I could sit there as we get ready for Thanksgiving, Martin. I'm sitting there in that shithole, excuse my language, but I'm sitting there thinking, I know what my family are doing back home. My mother's fixing her turkey. She's making homemade bread, making rolls. And little did I know that she was not only making food for herself and our family, she was making it for the media. I didn't know all this. So I spent my first Thanksgiving, my first Christmas, and it was New Year's. And in January of 1980, they put us into a room, myself and two other people, a room that I would spend for the next 400 days, not that specific room, but they blocked us in a room for the next 400 days, Martin, 400 days. And so when people say, well, you didn't really have it too bad, that just blows me away when if people say, well, it wasn't that bad. Psychologically and mentally, how do you tie yourself to a chair for 400 or 30 days and then lock yourself in a room for the next 400 days? We went outside 7 times. So in that room, I had Billy Gallegos, another Marine, and Jerry Plotkin, the only civilian that was there. He was in the wrong place, wrong time. And so in that room, thank goodness we had each other, but there were, because of a person that broke during interrogations, he put 7 people in solitary confinement for 444 days because of his confession. But yeah, it was, you definitely, you lost hope at times, you thinking that nothing's going to happen. And why would the American government do anything? Because they wanted the Shaw back, and there was no way he was going to come back.
Do you assume at some point we're going to die, all of us? I mean, is that hard to avoid that thought?
That was morning, noon, and night. I can tell you that for the first 30 days, I didn't eat much because how do you go and eat at a smorgasbord when you got a gun to your head? I didn't take a shower, but the first 2 months into the whole ordeal, thank goodness the Marine Corps taught me how to take a bird bath. And that's with a bar of soap. You clean the bar of soap first, and that bar of soap became your toothpaste, and your finger was your toothbrush. Then you would strip down and take a bath in that sink, and then you would wash your pants and wear your underwear in your pants. And so it was just like, each day you didn't know if you were going to live or die. And it was not until April 1980, April 25th, when all of a sudden they moved us from the Chancery. And again, this night, and I can tell you, being held hostage was like a traumatic situation each day. I don't know if you've ever, or your listeners have ever been through a traumatic situation. Being held hostage was traumatic, but each day was a traumatic change, a different situation. But the night of April 25th, they ran into our room that night. And whenever that door opened, Martin, you jumped because you didn't know if they were going to come in and start shooting or what. And the night of April 25th, they came running into our room, handcuffed my left hand to Jerry Plotkin's right hand, handcuffed my right hand to Billy Gallegos' left hand. They blindfold us. They take us from the room, which we were locked in. They go to the restroom. Martin, you could not go to the restroom when you wanted to. You could not get a glass of water when you wanted to. You had to wait till they basically took you. And so that night, they took us from the room, took us through the basement, out through the back, into an embassy vehicle. They put us in the back seat. Jerry Plotkin was handcuffed to the left side of the vehicle. Billy Gallegos was handcuffed to the right side. We were all handcuffed to each other, blindfolded, handcuffed. They take a picture from the passenger side. I mean, I'll never forget it. And all of a sudden, they put a blanket over top of us. And the reason why they did that, Martin, is because they had found the charred bodies, 8 charred bodies of American commandos that had perished in the desert. Iran had no idea that there was a command force coming in to try to rescue the hostages. They made it to the middle of the country of Iran in the desert, and a CH-53 helicopter and a C-130 collided, killing those 8. And so they aborted the rescue operation. But the Islamic Republic of Iran thought that they were still coming to get us. So they moved us. When they took that picture of us blindfolded, handcuffed, they put a blanket over top of us. We all three said at the same time, this isn't good. And I mean, it was like that daily. You analyzed everything, and then they moved us. We didn't know it that they were moving us away from the American embassy. By that night of April 25th, 1980, all the hostages were scattered throughout the country of Iran, and we didn't know what was going to happen next.
You ever wonder why, and it's a terrible thought, but why they didn't kill anybody? Like what, I wonder what were they hoping to get out of it? Just to embarrass the US?
No, no, absolutely. Why they didn't kill us? Yeah, it was definitely, we were used as pawns to humiliate. I can tell you, Martin, in our interrogations, they told us it is not you, the American people, we hate. It's your government, but we will use you to humiliate your government. Martin, they have done it for 42 years. The Islamic Republic of Iran, they know our government changes every 4 to 8 years. They only need to negotiate through each one and then flush them out and embarrass them. And that's what they did to President Carter. Many Americans don't know that President Carter paid $8.3 billion to release the hostages. Iran took us, but we had to pay Iran to release the hostages. I mean, go figure that. And then Iran kills 240 Marines in Beirut. And then they create IEDs to kill our troops in Iraq. And so many times I wonder what would have happened had I pulled the trigger on November 4th, 1979. Would we even have this mess? But because 42 years later, here we are. And it's really, they used us as their pawns, their negotiators, and just elements to make our government look bad. And it did. It destroyed President Carter's administration.
To pull the trigger, though, for you, that would have meant shooting an innocent woman, correct? 'Cause that would
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. An innocent woman, and also because you can't shoot upon people unless your life is at risk. And that morning, they were using women to force forward. But you know what? I wanted the Islamic Republic of Iran. I wanted those people to feel the same pain I was feeling. And I mean, I can tell you, Martin, it's one of those things that you sit there, the what if, what would have happened? In the first 30 days, I was so upset with myself. But again, my orders were also to stand down, don't fire. I would have been the radical Marine that would have shot, unarmed innocent people. Plus, who's to say the Islamic Republic of Iran would have used those individuals and paraded them around in the front of the American embassy that the Marines were shooting unarmed innocent women, not knowing that they were using women as shields. And so you got to give them credit. They know how to manipulate it. And it's just one of those things you wonder the what if.
So what were the scariest days when they would line you up, pretend that they were going to shoot everybody?
The scary days, Martin, was the first day when they took us. And I mean, there's pictures out there, and you can see the pictures of us blindfolded the morning of November 4th. And those blindfolds with our arms being tied, for the next 30 days. I mean, those were scary days. You didn't know if you were going to freaking live or die morning, noon, and night. And then spending your first Thanksgiving, your first Christmas, your first New Year's, and then being locked in a room where we were locked in a room for the next 400 days. I mean, had somebody told me that, Rocky, you're going to start being held hostage on November 4th, 1979, and you're not going to be released till January 20th, 1981, I would have said, you're out of your mind. There's no freaking way. But you know what? You did. But each day was bad. I mean, the interrogations, the driving throughout the country of Iran, blindfolded, handcuffed, coming back, being put into Evin prison, where you heard people being tortured, women and men. And then, of course, the second Thanksgiving, the second Christmas, you got to the point, Martin, you really didn't care anymore. And you would start putting the weapon in the mouth and saying, pull the trigger. You didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And you couldn't. And there were individuals that did try to commit suicide while they were over there. I didn't see them because I was in a room with two other people for 444 days. It wasn't until January 20th of 1981, Martin, that they moved us from our room. They took us from the room that night. I was the first one out. Instead of turning right, we turned left, walked down the hallway. I'm blindfolded. Jerry's got his arm on my shoulder. And all of a sudden, the guard turns me to the right. He opens the door, and there's a cold breeze flying through the door. And I walk out and I walked into something I hadn't felt for 2 years, snow. And they had taken our shoes from us back in March of 1980. And I'm walking through snow through the toes, and it's wet, but it feels so cold, but it feels so great. And the snow is hitting me in the face as I'm walking. I can remember the crunching of the snow. Put us onto a vehicle. We drive off. We all of a sudden get to this destination. We turn right, and you hear a sound of a jet engine, and your heart is pounding because you had prayed for this. You had hoped, you had cried for this opportunity. And all of a sudden, the vehicle stops, and we're right behind the plane, and the force is pushing against the airplane. And all of a sudden, they tell us to unblindfold. I didn't have glasses then, didn't have hearing aids then. And I start to unblindfold, which you weren't ever allowed to do. If you were caught on blindfolding, they'd pound on you. And so you start to unblindfold, and here you are looking at somebody that you hadn't seen since 1979, November, when you had breakfast with them. And before you had the chance to say anything, they start plucking one by one off this vehicle. And outside the vehicle, they're chanting "Death to America," and they're spitting on us. And we're boarding the back of an airplane. We didn't realize it was an Algerian airplane at the time. And they're telling us to please board very quickly. We must leave. That plane sat there for 3 days waiting for us to be released. As I walk up the gangplank, I see this young lady. I hadn't seen a woman in 444 days. And she takes me and she goes, "We must leave very quickly. Come with me." And so she puts me down. And all of a sudden, one after another start boarding the airplane. And Martin, they start closing the door and saying, wait, where's Gene? Where's Kurt? Where's Debbie? Where's Judy? Where's everybody else at? They said, "No, you're the last." We said, "What are you talking about? There's not 65 people here." And they said, "No, the others were let go a year earlier." We didn't know that other people were let go a year earlier. We didn't have any information for over a year. And so they assured us that, no, you're the last. We must leave very quickly. We've been here for 3 days waiting for you. And so the pilot gets to the end of the runway. He starts accelerating, and he's got the foot on the brake, and all of a sudden it comes back down to an idle. And Martin, I mean, through all the mock firing squads, the Russian roulette, I might look normal on the outside, but I'm all screwed up on the inside. I mean, the mind games that they played, they never go away. And the pilot comes on and says they've turned the runway lights off. So we have to wait till they turn the lights on. And what they were doing was nothing more than to humiliate Carter. They waited 20 minutes, Martin, until President Carter was out of office and Reagan came in just to stab him in the back. And that was the whole piece. The Shah died July 27th, 1980. We were let go January 20th, 1981. And it wasn't about the Shah. It was about the humiliation factor. And I hate to say it, Martin, 7 days ago in Iran, they are celebrating to this day, death to America. And I'm a true believer, Martin. A Muslim is not born with hatred. They are taught hatred. And they have taught it for 42 years. Show me one school in our country that is burning Iranian flags and chanting death to Iran. In that country, out of 1,200 cities, 800 cities is chanting this. And so we wonder why people can walk up to a building and pull a cord and detonate themselves and kill all these people. Well, if you've been taught that, that's what you're going to do. So it hurts that teaching continues to this day.
When you see other military endeavors, like Afghanistan was the biggest one of late, play out, and it's probably not fair to lump all these countries together, but are there parts of the world where they just don't get us and we don't get them, and there's nothing we can do about it? Is that too generic? I'm not sure.
I can tell you Iraq, for an example, that was the first war, right? I can tell you that war, Martin, it started when I was in prison, in Evin prison in 1980. The war with Iran and Iraq. There were dogfights. I mean, as a 23-year-old kid, I'm in this foreign country, and they're fighting a war. Iran knew that they could not take Saddam Hussein. There was one country that could take Saddam, and that was the United States. So what do? We get intelligence that Saddam Hussein has got weapons of mass destruction. We go in and we take Saddam out, and there were no weapons of mass destruction. I always say that I think somebody did a spell check error. Instead of a Q, it should have been an N, Iran. But anyway, we go and we take Saddam out. Who takes over? Who's trying to take over Iraq right now? But Iran. I mean, And then, of course, you got this war in Afghanistan and Pakistan. And it's like right in the middle, you got a country, Iran. And it seems like, is Iran supporting and supplying weapons and housing to all these, our enemy? I don't know. I mean, because I've not been there since then, but to me, it was like, we fought the war for them in Iraq, and we're basically giving them the country. We're trying to, and I think we're hopefully going to try to defend it more.
Did Argo get it right? The movie, Ben Affleck behind it. I think Clooney was part of it, and I think your son and yourself were actually on the set. Your son had a Spencer, good CBC grad, had a cameo in there, and that was a fantastic movie. Probably hard for you to watch, but did they get it right?
You know what? You're absolutely right. It was hard for me to view it. I can tell you, it was just synchronicity. My wife and I were at a wedding in Columbus, Ohio, in 2011, and the father of the bride, he says, "Rocky, I want you to meet my sister. She's a casting director out in LA. You never know, someday you might be able to help your son." Which he knew that Spencer was an actor, CBC, and everything, and what was in college. And so I gave her my card. 3 days later, Martin, she's out in LA emailing her girlfriend, asking her, "Hey, what are you working on?" Girlfriend comes back and says, "I'm working with Ben Affleck, George Clooney, John Goodman, and a cast of others about the Iran hostage crisis." And the girl we just met, she goes, "Well, I just met one of the hostages at a wedding this past weekend." And the girl, "Who was that?" She goes, "Rocky Sickmann." She goes, "Rocky Sickmann, was he one of the Marines?" And she said, "Yeah, he was." She said, "Well, his character, Sergeant Sickmann, which is played by Ryan Ahern, a much better looking guy than I. Thank goodness he got that good. Anyway, his character is in the movie." And so the friend that I had just given her a card, she said, "What's the chance of Ben meeting Rocky? He was there for 444 days. Not like my colleagues, they were there for 80 days, which again, one day being held hostage is freaking something you'll never forget. 80 days is still a lot. And so I had no idea that this movie is being created. 2 days later, Ben Affleck comes back and says, "I'd love to meet Rocky. Bring him out, bring his son, and we'll put him in a movie." Martin, I'm here to tell you, shit like that doesn't happen every day. So I fly Spencer overnight. I meet him the next morning in LAX. Hours later, we're on the set of Argo. And we walk in. Spencer's got real long hair because it's 79. And so Ben Affleck comes running up and hugs me, goes, "Rocky, it's an honor to meet you." And before I know it, they put Spencer into the set, the CIA room. He's a mail delivery guy pushing a mail cart. And I'm put in the back with Chris Terrio, the guy that wrote the script, and he's directing everything, telling me. And here they are focusing in on Spencer, like wondering, who's this new guy? And for me, though, it was very emotional because my son, ever since he was 6 years old, wanted to be an actor. And his first movie was Argo, which is an Academy Award winning movie. And so Ben invited me back to the Canadian Embassy, where I got to meet Ken Taylor again. It just so happened a week before I was taken hostage, Martin, the charge d'affaires, Bruce Langdon, and myself beat Ken Taylor and his assistant in a tennis match right behind the ambassador's house on our compound, and we smoked him. And little did we realize that a week later he rescued our 6 people. So it was great to see him again, but he's passed away since.
How many of your fellow hostages did you guys communicate over the year? Were there ever reunions? How much contact over the years did you guys have?
Yeah, and that's a great point, because now out of the 52, there are about 33 of us, the Marines being the youngest ones. But I can tell you, I was in a room with Billy Gallegos and Jerry Plotkin. Jerry Plotkin was the only American civilian that was in the American embassy. He was Jewish and he was a merchant. He was caught with $250,000 in cash to collect $250,000 of cash to basically hand off to a Korean that was walking out of the American embassy. Well, the Iranians kept Jerry Plotkin, but they let the Korean go because they didn't want a Korean international incident. This is an American incident. And so I was in a room with Jerry Plotkin. He's passed away back in the latter part 80s. And Billy and I, there's not a day that goes by that we don't, communicate texting. His daughter calls me Uncle Rocky. My kids call Billy Uncle Billy. It's a bond that, I'm here telling you a story, but only Billy remembers the sounds and the smells and the stories that, are never going to go away. And so, but I was with him for 400 of those 444 days, and Jerry Plotkin. And so the other people I really didn't get to see, but we do occasionally get on emails and chat back and forth.
And your wife waited for you that entire, well, soon to be wife at the time, right? When you
That's
got
correct.
up,
Yeah,
you
being a
got up.
Marine. That's right. Being a Marine security guard, Martin, I was not allowed to be married, and Jill and I had just started dating in early part of 1979, and I told her, I says, I got this last gig I wanted to do, and growing up in Crockle, population of 50, dogs and cats included, I told her, I said, I want to see the world, and the world I saw. I went to Asia, went to Europe, and I came back and went into MSG. She was just graduating. She was 18. I was 22, and she was going away. She got a scholarship for dancing. And so I get over there, and obviously I'm taken. And you've seen the movie Tom Hanks, Castaway. He had a locket. I didn't have a locket, but I had her picture. And her picture was really embedded in my head that the first 30 days, I said, I'm not going to let these people get the best of me. And if I ever make it out, I'm going to marry this girl. And so sure enough, 444 days later, I call home for the first time. And my father used to always mess around with my buddies growing up. And whenever my buddies, we were on a party line, Martin, out in Crockle, Missouri. Party lines, we had 7 houses on our party line. And so whenever our phone would ring, different tone, my father would pick up the phone and say, yeah, Crockle store. And my buddies would hang up thinking they got a wrong number. So I called home that first time and spoke to my dad. I said, yeah, is this Crockle store? And my dad goes, no, this isn't Crockle store. And I said, hey, Dad. And he knew I was messing with him. So anyway, that was my first phone call back to my mom and dad. So we started chit chatting, and my dad goes, Rocky, Jill's here. And I said, she waited, and he goes, well, she wants to talk to you. I'm thinking, well, that doesn't sound too good. Did she get engaged or what? She's a beautiful girl. At that point in time, Martin, she basically said, Rocky, you got to make a decision, either me or the military, but I can't do this. I waited 444 days. I can't do this again. I said, what about the State Department? And she goes, travel overseas? I said, yeah. And she goes, no, I can't do it. So, and she feels bad because she understands, especially during Veterans Day, that there are families that do, sacrifice. 1% of our population is serving a war on terror right now, and their families are all going to be at home this Thanksgiving without their loved one. And so it's one of those things that she finally gave me the blessing. I became director of military sales for Budweiser. I traveled the world, and she just didn't want to know where I was. She didn't want that incident to come back. But we've been married 40 wonderful years, and we have 3 wonderful children, Martin, and 4 grandchildren. And I go back to Folds of Honor. It's an organization that provides scholarships to families of fallen and disabled. Those 8 individuals, the morning of April 25th, they lost everything. They never again would they ever be able to go fishing with their son, kick a soccer ball with their daughter, play lacrosse, go to a high school dance, walk their daughter down the aisle, and hold a grandchild. I've been able to do all those things. And those guys sacrificed their life for my life. And that's, I can't ever forget that.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your story, and especially with Veterans Day. And I wonder, there's so many, I think a lot of people pay lip service. What's the best way for American citizens to show their respect? What's the best way? There's a lot of ceremonies and stuff, and I think sometimes they're sincere, sometimes they're not. What's the best way to do it?
You know what? I've got a 2-year-old granddaughter, and every time she sees an American flag, she always says, Papa, hand salute. And she salutes the flag. She understands. And so, just as my parents taught me to love of family, love of faith, love of country. And again, being able to raise the flag and have the flag out. We had a flagpole in front of our house. And I used to raise that. So, when people see a branch of the military, I do it all the time as I'm walking through an airport. They don't know who I am, but I go over and say, hey, thanks for serving our country. We need to remember that the sacrifices that our past and our current service members are providing is the wonderful love of the land that we live in. And we take it for granted. It's not free. And these men and women are willing to give their life to protect it.
Rocky, great to catch up. We want everybody to check out Folds of Honor. And just in recent years, they've done a great job getting their name out there. And I know Schnucks would do like the Roundup, and Budweiser and Dave Peacock, and those folks kind of got behind it. And it's great to get the publicity that it certainly deserves. And Look forward to seeing you in person, my friend.
Well, thank you, sir. I mean, just real quick, Folds of Honor, 35,000 scholarships. 90 cents of every dollar goes back to the recipient. 41% of those recipients are minority. Foldsofhonor.org. We always like to say, honor their sacrifice, educate their legacy at Folds of Honor. So thanks again, Martin.